Mr. Speaker.
Order. Questions for oral answer. Mr. Yip Hong Wing.
Mr. Speaker, may I have your permission to take PQs 1 and 2 on today's order paper together?
Please go ahead.
Sir, from 9th October 2023, the postage rate for standard letter mail will increase by 20 cents to 51 cents. The impact will be felt mostly by corporates rather than households, as they account for 80% of all letter mail sent in Singapore. In fact, the average consumer sends less than one letter a month. Nonetheless, all households will receive a booklet of 10 stamps of 51 cents each, which is enough to cover the increase in postage fees for the average household for about a year. This is the first substantive increase in postage since 2014. In the 10 years since, the postal landscape has changed dramatically. For example, letter mail volumes have been reduced by about half. As a public postal licensee, SingPost has an obligation to deliver letters to every addressable place in Singapore. It is also a publicly listed company that engages in non-regulated businesses, such as logistics services and properties locally and overseas. While the overall business of SingPost remains profitable in financial year 2022, more than 90% of these profits were attributable to its logistics business and largely contributed by its overseas investments. SingPost's core business in Singapore is post and parcel, which incurred operating losses of $16 million. This is due to the global decline in letter mail, as well as intense competition from logistics companies and e-commerce players growing their own parcel delivery capabilities. As a result, per letter delivery cost has risen considerably. IMDA approved SingPost's request to raise postage rates to better reflect the cost of delivering letters. After the increase, postage rates in Singapore remain comparable to countries like Japan, which is about 78 Singapore cents, and the US, which is about 86 Singapore cents. As noted by several analysts, there is no guarantee that an increase in postage rates will improve the financial position of SingPost. The boost to revenues may not compensate for the accelerated decline of letter volumes if customers opt for more e-substitution. As part of the postage rate increase, SingPost is also expected to invest in transforming its domestic post and parcel business so that it remains efficient and provide high-quality service. Nonetheless, this is a move that could put SingPost on a more sustainable path to fulfill its obligations as a public postal licensee.
Mr. Yip Hong Wing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the SMS for its reply. I declare that I'm working in an investment firm that's a stake in SingPost. I ask this PQ based on my residents' concerns and feedback on the issue. Some of my residents who work as property agents or in areas like in charitable organizations, small businesses and SMEs that still depend on domestic postage as a primary mode of advertising and marketing. They have therefore expressed concerns that a postage hike will affect their livelihoods, especially when there are also price hikes in other areas. So in addition to the 10 stamps that the Ministry will provide to each household to soften the impact of the increased postal rates, will the ministry consider some form of targeted help for those who will be particularly affected, like those that I mentioned earlier? Thank you.
SMS Tan.
Sir, the average consumer sends less than one letter per month, so the impact to consumers will be small, as I had shared earlier in my PQ reply. The bulk of the mail letter, the 80% of domestic mail are by corporate entities. Most of it are actually by larger corporates like banks and financial institutions, but a significant portion also by small, medium enterprises that the member has mentioned. To mitigate this, SingPost will continue to provide appropriate bulk discounts to businesses and provide other customized support for this group of consumers and businesses. SingPost will also continue to honour all first and second local stamp purchase before the rate increase. So to give assurance to the members' businesses who are using the stamps, these stamps will be honoured even after the postal rate increase.
Associate Professor James Lim.
Two follow-ups from me. Given how large corporations and perhaps more pertinently the government are the primary users of postal mail, one is left to wonder whether this price hike does not amount to a tax of the government on itself, and if so, is there actually a more efficient approach to pass through such cost increases? My second question has to do with the fact that cross-subsidization, of course, as the MOS knows, occurs in all businesses. So given overall net profits, is this actually the best time for the hike, or would a delay perhaps be more optimal?
SMS Tan.
So I thank the member for his two supplementary questions. Maybe allow me to be clear in the first instance. There are two reviews that are ongoing. First, the government is carrying out a fundamental review on the future of post and the longer-term considerations around this sector, as well as changes to the postal landscape in the coming years. As shared earlier, there's a global decline in mail volumes, certainly in Singapore, and it has been accelerated over the last few years with the advent of digital technologies and certainly over the COVID period. So we are doing a fundamental review on the future of the postal service. In doing so, we want to ensure that the postal service is sustainable for Singapore, sustainable for operators, and sustainable for consumers. And this may require us to take a relook at existing assumptions, such as letter delivery standards. So that's one review. So the second review is actually by SingPost itself. So I just wanted to be clear. SingPost has committed to review its own costs and operations as part of its business transformation. And the government will work closely with SingPost in its review to ensure that it continues to meet its public postal obligations while safeguarding the interests of the public as well as postal workers. So there are two reviews. And to the member's first question, let's a technical clarification. Actually, the most of the mail volume in Singapore is not by the government. The government contributes a very small proportion of the total mail volume in Singapore. Second, on his question about cross-subsidization, I think we have to understand it's not sustainable for a publicly listed company to sustain a loss-making business, especially for SingPost, where the bulk of its revenue is outside Singapore, and more than 90% of its profits are from those unregulated businesses. So a shareholder of the company would justifiably ask, is this cross-subsidization on both ways? When the business is doing well outside Singapore, it is expected to support the not so profitable businesses in Singapore. But what happens is the other way around. What is businesses in other countries are loss-making? Is there expectation for us to backstop those losses? So I think we have to make clear that this is not the regulatory framework which we are operating under. The revenues, the profits are ring-fenced for the domestic regulated segment. It's not supposed to offset any losses in its other businesses, and vice versa. And this postal sector, maybe I just give some context to the member. in Singapore, the SingPost just celebrated its 165 years of service in Singapore. It's a century-old business and century-old sector, but the changes to its business model has been quite dramatic over the recent years with digital technologies, and certainly mail volumes saw a huge decline during the COVID-19 period. So we are reviewing the fundamental assumptions around the postal service for the long haul to make it more sustainable and fair. And while I talked about e-substitution, I think there are still important business correspondence that we still require the basic mail service, although it's getting smaller and smaller. And I think for many Singaporeans, they shared with me so that it's heartwarming to receive a postcard from a loved ones overseas, or even a child sending a postcard to Santa Claus. So there are needs for postal service, but how do we design a system that's fair and sustainable for long haul, and there's commercial incentive for the operator to continue to reinvest in infrastructure, in technology, automation, and importantly, in the jobs and upgrading of its workers. So that is the fundamental reason at the heart of our review that the government is doing.